champagne, and lies. The silk sheets felt like water against Natalie Brooks's skin as she settled into the king-sized bed of the presidential suite. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly under a full moon, waves catching silver light like scattered diamonds. Everything about this moment should have been perfect. Everything should have felt like the fairy tale she'd been living for the past 9 months. Natalie's wedding dress hung on the closet door, a cascade of ivory lace and delicate beading that had cost more than her car. Her mother had cried when she first saw it. Her sister Harper had whistled low and said, "Well, you definitely married up." And she had. Owen Caldwell was everything Natalie had never known she was looking for. Successful, charming, confident. He'd walked into her small photography studio in Riverside looking for someone to shoot his company's annual report, and somehow left with her phone number instead. Their courtship had been intense, romantic, overwhelming in the best possible way. Owen took her to restaurants she'd only read about, introduced her to people whose names she recognized from business magazines, made her feel like she was the only woman in any room they entered together. When he proposed after just 7 months on a private beach in Maui with a ring that made her hands shake, Natalie had said yes without hesitation. Now, lying in the honeymoon suite of the Ocean View Resort where 300 guests had just watched them exchange vows, Natalie felt an unexpected hollowness in her chest. Owen had been distant all evening. Not obviously so. He'd smiled for photos, danced with her mother, made charming toasts that had everyone laughing. But Natalie knew him well enough now to recognize when he was performing. And tonight he'd been performing. She heard the bathroom door open and kept her eyes closed, suddenly too exhausted to process whatever was wrong. The wedding had been beautiful but draining. 7 hours of smiling, greeting guests, pretending her feet didn't hurt in the designer heels Owen had insisted matched the dress perfectly. All she wanted now was sleep. The bed shifted as Owen climbed in beside her, but he didn't reach for her. Didn't pull her close the way he usually did. Natalie heard him moving around the suite, the clink of ice in a glass, his footsteps on the marble floor. Then his phone buzzed. "I need to take this," Owen muttered, apparently assuming she was already asleep. Natalie kept her breathing deep and even, that old trick from childhood sleepovers. She heard him slide open the balcony door, but his voice carried clearly through the ocean breeze. "Gabrielle, finally," Owen said, and something in his tone made Natalie's stomach clench. This wasn't his business voice. This was intimate, warm, real in a way he never quite sounded with her. I know. The wedding took forever. You should have seen how her mother cried. I thought she'd never stop with the speeches." Natalie's eyes opened in the darkness. Who was Gabrielle? Owen had never mentioned anyone by that name. "Of course it went perfectly," Owen continued, his voice carrying that edge of arrogance she sometimes glimpsed beneath his charm. "Everyone bought the whole love story completely. Her family thinks I'm their golden ticket, and my parents are just relieved I'm finally settling down with someone they consider appropriate." The word appropriate landed like a slap. Natalie's heart began to pound, but she forced herself to remain completely still. "Listen, the merger partners needed to see stability. Chen and Associates won't sign with someone they consider a playboy. They're old-fashioned, traditional. They want their business handled by family men, people with roots." Owen laughed, a sound without real humor. Natalie was perfect for that. Small-town girl, sweet, naive enough to believe every word. Her photography business gave me the wholesome, artistic angle. The investors ate it up. Natalie felt ice spreading through her veins. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be what she was hearing. 6 months, maybe less, Owen said. "Once the merger finalizes and the money transfers, I'll file for divorce. We'll say it didn't work out, that we rushed into things. People will sympathize, the small-town photographer who couldn't handle the pressure of my world. She signed the prenup without even reading it properly, so she walks away with nothing. No. No. Natalie bit her tongue so hard she tasted blood, fighting to keep her breathing steady, to maintain the illusion of sleep. The prenup was genius, Owen continued, moving closer to the railing. My lawyer made sure every asset is protected. She gets nothing, no property, no spousal support, nothing. Maybe I'll throw her some money out of guilt, but legally, she has zero claim to anything I own." There was a pause as he listened to whoever Gabrielle was. "I love you too," Owen said softly, and Natalie felt something inside her chest crack open. "This was always for us, remember? Once I have the Chen merger secured and the 200 million in my accounts, we can finally be together properly. Get married for real, not this business arrangement. Natalie was just a placeholder, Gabrielle. A means to an end. Natalie heard him laugh again at something Gabrielle said. She's completely asleep, exhausted from playing perfect bride all day. Honestly, she has no idea how any of this really works. She thinks taking wedding photos and choosing flowers means something. She actually believes I love her. His voice dropped. You're the only person I've ever really loved. This marriage is just paperwork, a transaction. Nothing about it is real. The balcony door slid open as Owen came back inside. Natalie kept her eyes closed, her breathing deep, even as tears began sliding silently down her face into the silk pillowcase. She heard Owen set down his glass, check his phone one more time, then finally climb into bed. Within minutes, his breathing evened out into sleep. He had no trouble sleeping. Why would he? To him, this was just business. A strategic move in whatever game he was playing. The woman beside him, the one he'd vowed to love and honor just hours ago, meant nothing to him beyond her usefulness. Natalie lay in the darkness of her honeymoon suite, listening to the ocean and her husband's peaceful breathing, and felt her entire world collapse. Every moment of their relationship was suddenly suspect. Every smile, every tender word, every romantic gesture, had any of it been real? Or had she been nothing more than a mark from the very beginning? The small-town photographer who'd thought she'd found true love with a successful businessman had actually been chosen specifically because she was easy to fool, easy to control, easy to discard when she was no longer useful. But as the first light of dawn began creeping through the windows, something shifted inside Natalie. The tears stopped. The pain transformed into something harder, sharper, more useful. Owen thought she was naive and controllable. He thought she'd be easy to manipulate and easy to throw away. He was about to discover how wrong he was. Natalie Brooks might have been trusting enough to fall for his lies, but she wasn't stupid. And she wasn't going to let Owen Caldwell destroy her without a fight. If he wanted to play games, she'd play, but this time she'd be playing to win. As Owen slept peacefully beside her, unaware that his carefully constructed scheme had just been exposed, Natalie began planning. She would need evidence, allies, a strategy. She would need to be smarter and more careful than she'd ever been in her life. But first, she needed to get through this honeymoon without Owen suspecting she knew anything. She needed to play the role of loving, trusting wife while she figured out exactly what he was hiding and why this merger mattered so desperately. The game had changed. Owen just didn't know it yet. The double-life morning sunlight streamed through the suite windows as Natalie stirred, pretending to wake naturally. Owen was already dressed in linen pants and a polo shirt, looking at his phone with that expression she now recognized as calculation rather than concentration. Good morning. Beautiful, he said, glancing up with that practiced smile. I ordered breakfast. Thought we could eat on the balcony before heading to the beach. That sounds perfect, Natalie replied, keeping her voice soft and grateful. She stretched, playing the role of happy newlywed. Last night was amazing. It really was, Owen agreed, and Natalie had to suppress the bitter laugh rising in her throat. Amazing, right? They spent the day exactly as planned, lounging on private beaches, sipping cocktails, taking photos that Owen immediately posted to social media with captions about eternal love and perfect beginnings. Natalie smiled for every picture, played her part flawlessly, all while her mind worked furiously beneath the surface. On the third day of their week-long honeymoon, while Owen was on a business call that lasted 2 hours, Natalie locked herself in the bathroom and called her sister. Harper, I need you, she said quietly. Something's happened. 4 hours later, Natalie sat alone in a beachside cafe while Owen thought she was getting a massage. Harper had caught the first flight out and met her there, ordering them both strong coffee while Natalie recounted everything she'd overheard. That absolute piece of garbage, Harper said, her lawyer mind immediately clicking into action. Harper was 32, 5 years older than Natalie, and had built a reputation as a ruthless corporate attorney. Tell me you recorded it. I didn't know it was happening until it was too late. Okay, we can work with this. Harper pulled out her tablet. First, don't sign anything else. Don't agree to any changes in your financial situation. Second, we need to find out exactly what this is his lifeline, Harper finished. Chen and Associates is a conservative, family-owned investment firm worth billions. They're known for only partnering with people who share their values: integrity, family, stability. Owen needed to look like a stable family man to even get a meeting with them. Preston pulled up another document. But there's more. Look at this timeline. He showed Natalie a list of dates. These are when you introduced Owen to your photography clients. And these are when those same clients signed investment contracts with Caldwell Ventures. Natalie's stomach dropped. He used my connections? He targeted them, Preston said grimly. Your client list reads like a who's who of wealthy individuals looking to invest surplus capital. Owen systematically approached each one after meeting them through you. Look at the pattern. Elderly couples, young professionals with inheritances, small business owners with nest eggs. All of them trusted him because he was married to you, their trusted photographer. The room spun slightly. Natalie thought of Mrs. Patterson, the sweet elderly woman who'd hired her to photograph her grandchildren, and then excitedly told Natalie about the wonderful investment opportunity Owen had offered. Or Jason and Melissa, the young couple who'd used Natalie for their wedding photos and then invested their savings with Owen's firm on his recommendation. How many? Natalie asked quietly. That we've found? 17. Total investments of approximately $4 million. Preston's expression was grim. And Natalie, several of these investments show signs of fraud. The companies don't exist or the returns are fabricated. Owen's been running a variation of a Ponzi scheme, using new investors' money to pay returns to old ones. Harper placed her hand over Natalie's. We think Owen planned to use the Chen merger money to cover his tracks, pay back enough investors to avoid immediate prosecution, then divorce you and disappear with whatever's left. And frame me for it, Natalie said, the pieces clicking into place. That's why he had me sign documents I thought were household bills. He was creating a paper trail linking me to his fraud. Preston nodded. We found 3 bank accounts opened in your name that you didn't authorize. Forged signatures, fake identification. If this all blows up, Owen has positioned himself to claim you were his partner in the scheme or even the mastermind. Natalie felt rage replacing the hurt. Owen hadn't just married her for a business merger. He'd married her to use her connections, frame her for his crimes, and leave her destroyed when he disappeared. She'd been not just a placeholder, but a patsy. What do we do? She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Harper and Preston exchanged glances. We need more proof before we go public. And we need to do this before the merger finalizes. Once Chen and Associates transfers that money, it becomes much harder to recover. How long do we have? 3 months. The merger is scheduled to close the first week of November. Natalie thought about the calendar. It was early August. 12 weeks to gather evidence, build a case, and stop Owen before he destroyed more lives. 12 weeks of living with a man who'd betrayed her more thoroughly than she'd imagined possible. I can do it, she said. Tell me what you need. Over the next month, Natalie became someone she didn't recognize, a spy in her own marriage. She photographed documents when Owen left his briefcase open. She recorded his phone conversations from the next room. She smiled and played devoted wife while mentally cataloging every suspicious comment, every late-night call, every time Owen's charm slipped to reveal the calculating predator beneath. The hardest part was the isolation. She couldn't tell her mother, who called weekly gushing about what a wonderful son-in-law Owen was. She couldn't confide in her friends, many of whom Owen had already targeted as potential investors. She could only trust Harper and Preston, meeting them in secret, passing along evidence, building their case piece by careful piece. At night, she lay beside Owen in their bed, listening to him sleep peacefully while she stared at the ceiling, wondering how she'd missed all the signs. But she also felt herself changing, hardening, becoming someone stronger than the naive photographer who'd said "I do" 3 months ago. Owen thought he'd chosen the perfect victim. Instead, he'd created his own worst nightmare, someone who knew his secrets and was determined to stop him. The question wasn't whether Natalie would expose Owen. The question was how to do it in a way that protected everyone he'd hurt and ensured he faced consequences for what he'd done. And time was running out. Allies in unexpected places. The break came from an unexpected source. Felix Romano, Owen's business partner, approached Natalie at a charity gala in mid-September. While Owen networked across the room, Felix quietly asked if they could speak privately. In a deserted hallway, Felix dropped his bomb. I know you know. About Gabrielle, about the merger, about everything. Natalie's heart raced, but she kept her voice steady. I don't know what you mean. I've been Owen's partner for 3 years, Felix said. I've watched him run this con before. You're not the first woman he's married for business purposes. The last one was 5 years ago. Same story, different merger. She didn't figure it out in time and lost everything. He handed Natalie a flash drive. This contains everything you need. I'm done being complicit. Owen's planning to frame you for the fraud and disappear with Gabrielle to somewhere without extradition treaties. These files show the real financial state of Caldwell Ventures, the fake companies, the forged documents in your name. Everything. Why are you helping me? Natalie asked. Because I have a daughter, Felix said quietly. And I'd want someone to help her if she was in your position. Also, Owen's planning to pin the fraud on me, too. We're both his exit strategy. With Felix's evidence, Harper and Preston built an ironclad case. They discovered Gabrielle wasn't just Owen's girlfriend. She was his accomplice, a disbarred lawyer who specialized in helping Owen move money and create false identities. Together, they'd run variations of this scheme across 3 states, but they needed one more piece. Proof that the Chen merger was built on false pretenses. Harper suggested they approach Chen and Associates directly. If they're really the ethical company their reputation suggests, they'll want to know they're about to partner with a criminal. Natalie arranged a meeting with Miranda Chen, the CEO, claiming she had information about Owen's true character. Miranda, a sharp woman in her 60s, listened to everything with growing fury. He told us you were his college sweetheart, that you'd built this life together over 10 years. He showed us photos, told stories, all lies. All lies, Natalie confirmed. We've been married 4 months. And he's planning to use your investment to cover up fraud that's already destroyed 17 families. Miranda made a decision. We're canceling the merger, and I'm calling the FBI. The trap springs. The confrontation happened at Owen's carefully planned celebration dinner. He'd invited the Chen family, major investors, and business partners to his favorite restaurant to toast the merger's imminent closing. Owen was in his element, charming, confident, already spending money he didn't have yet. Midway through dinner, Natalie stood. I have an announcement, she said, her voice carrying across the private room. Owen smiled indulgently, probably expecting her to toast him. Instead, she said, Everything Owen has told you is a lie. The room went silent. Owen's smile froze. Natalie, what are you? Our marriage is a fraud designed to make him seem stable enough for this merger. He's been embezzling money from investors, creating fake companies, and preparing to frame me and his partner Felix for his crimes. She nodded, and Harper entered with Preston and 3 FBI agents. Owen tried to bluster, to charm, to deflect. But Felix stood and corroborated everything. Miranda Chen announced the merger was canceled. And when agents presented the evidence, the recordings, the forged documents, the paper trail, Owen's facade finally crumbled. Gabrielle arrived to help him, only to be arrested herself. Turns out she'd been under investigation for months. Owen's scheme had finally attracted federal attention, and Natalie's evidence was exactly what prosecutors needed. As Owen was led away in handcuffs, he turned to Natalie with pure venom. You stupid girl, you've ruined everything. No, Natalie said calmly. I stopped you from ruining anyone else. Rising from the ashes. The annulment was granted within weeks, the judge calling Owen's deception one of the most egregious cases of marital fraud he'd seen. The prenup was invalidated due to Owen's criminal misrepresentation. With Harper's help, Natalie negotiated a settlement that compensated her for the damage to her business and reputation. She used the money to create the Brooks Foundation, offering free legal and financial services to fraud victims. Her story, when it inevitably leaked to the press, resonated. Women reached out sharing their own experiences with con artists who'd exploited their trust. Natalie's openness about her experience, the shame, the anger, the determination to fight back, helped others find their voice. 6 months post-annulment, Natalie stood before a packed auditorium giving a TED Talk on recognizing financial predators. They count on our embarrassment keeping us silent, she said. They count on us feeling stupid for trusting them. But trust isn't weakness. Exploitation is, and we owe predators nothing, especially not our silence. The video went viral. News outlets picked up the story. 3 more women came forward with similar. Not perfect, but something. Natalie had learned that rebuilding wasn't about erasing what happened. It was about transforming pain into purpose, using her experience to help others avoid the same traps. That evening, she had dinner with Preston at a small Italian restaurant. Nothing fancy, no pretense, just two people sharing a meal and easy conversation. When he walked her to her car afterward, she let him kiss her cheek. A small step, but a step nonetheless. Driving home through the city lights, Natalie thought about the girl who'd believed Owen's lies, who'd thought expensive weddings and romantic gestures meant something real. She didn't mourn that girl exactly. That naive trust had been a kind of gift, even if it was exploited. But she loved who she'd become more. Someone who trusted carefully, loved authentically, and refused to let betrayal define her. Owen had tried to make her a victim in his scheme. Instead, he'd inadvertently created his own worst nightmare. A survivor who turned her pain into power and used it to protect others. The wedding night that shattered her world had ultimately set her free. And Natalie wouldn't change a moment of the journey because it led her exactly where she needed to be. Home, whole, and finally beautifully, authentically herself. Not perfect, but something. Natalie had learned that rebuilding wasn't about erasing what happened. It was about transforming pain into purpose, using her experience to help others avoid the same traps. That evening, she had dinner with Preston at a small Italian restaurant. Nothing fancy, no pretense, just two people sharing a meal and easy conversation. When he walked her to her car afterward, she let him kiss her cheek. A small step, but a step nonetheless. Driving home through the city lights, Natalie thought about the girl who'd believed Owen's lies, who'd thought expensive weddings and romantic gestures meant something real. She didn't mourn that girl exactly. That naive trust had been a kind of gift, even if it was exploited. But she loved who she'd become more. Someone who trusted carefully, loved authentically, and refused to let betrayal define her. Owen had tried to make her a victim in his scheme. Instead, he'd inadvertently created his own worst nightmare. A survivor who turned her pain into power and used it to protect others. The wedding night that shattered her world had ultimately set her free. And Natalie wouldn't change a moment of the journey because it led her exactly where she needed to be. Home, whole, and finally, beautifully, authentically herself.